and sparklers.
Just all of it, just everything?
Yeah.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
A motion to adopt the order authorizing the sale of fireworks by retail fireworks permit holders. And the sale period will be May the 23rd to May the 28th at midnight. We have a motion and a second?
No second.
I second.
We have a second. Now, in this order, there also is a provision that if the Texas Fire Service determines drought conditions exist, then we could terminate the order. But, all right. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Oh, boy. Item number 14, first amendment to the interlocal agreement for postmortem examinations by the Harris County Institute of Forensic Science. Ryan, are you going to talk to us about that?
Yes, ma'am. It simply changed up what we talked about previously. We entered into, I'm guessing at some point in time, they had a dispute with another county because it was calculated, the storage costs were calculated in hours. And so, like I said, I'm reading between the lines and guessing somebody had a dispute with them on when they were going to come pick up the body before those storage costs would start accruing after, after that time limit was done. Now they've simply changed it to not hours, but days that we have to go pick up any body that we send them. And it actually gives us an extra day before those storage costs start accruing. So, to me, it's all positive. It's pretty straightforward. It's, it's a 2-page amendment, and everything else stays in full force and effect that we've already agreed to. So I do not see a problem, and that is, clarifies quite a bit.
Second.
All in favor, aye? Motion carried.
Brian, they changed it from 48 hours to days?
2 days. And it allows an extra day.
Okay, okay.
Item number 15 is to consider and authorize Butler Water Supply Corporation to proceed with the procurement of professional services for the 2019-2020 Texas Community Development Block Grant Program.
Hi, I'm Debbie Waddell with Butler Water, and the Board of Directors of Butler Water Supply Corporation is seeking consideration and authorization to proceed with procurement of professional services for 2019-2020, it's hard to say, Texas Community Block Grant Program to provide water system improvements.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. This, community development block grants, you can apply to that, but it has to be sponsored by the county. We really don't put any money into it or anything else, it just runs through the county, they require that.
I make a motion that we,
Do it.
all I can do.
All right, and the motion is to authorize Butler Water Supply Corporation to proceed with procurement of professional services.
I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
You can just follow what it says
I'll
on.
do that for sure.
on the-
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Just do it, you probably know the motion, so just.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
All right, go to item number 16.
Okay, do we vote?
Let it work, thank you. Yes, all in favor, aye?
Thank
Motion
you.
carried.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Item number 16 is to discuss the use of voting machines.
Okay, any information y'all need, I'm willing to
try to help you understand any of it. I would love to be able to lease our machines to whoever may need them. This first sheet, I gave you a little bit of help to know that we had 58 Albertronic machines, 58 cases that they go in. We have the 2 supervisor Albertronics that's for clear and test only. We had 63 flashcards, and down here on the bottom in blue, I tried to put you a little information, kind of what things mean, because I know it's hard to understand when you don't really deal with them. And then 105 PEVs. The law states that we can charge up to 10% for the equipment, of the cost of the equipment. In the past, y'all had voted to charge 1%. That is what Limestone County has charged at this point in time, this election for some of them. If there's any information y'all have, ask. I think me and the judge have discussed and talked about it.
Well, it'll be a while before we have to actually look at what we're going to do. And our options will be, if we managed our machines, we would have enough, actually.
Yes, ma'am?
If we got some more flashcards and got those programmed, and those are not very expensive, are they?
The prices of the flashcards were $29.
$29.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think that's the way that they manage some of it, is by having those flashcards that they can get programmed so that they're not having to wait until you can clear those other machines.
That's right.
But I think we'll be looking into it a little more, so we'll have our general election in November, and then next year, actually next year, we won't even have a primary, will we?
No, ma'am. Well, I have another primary.
We'll just have a November election. So in between now and the next time that comes up, probably at budget time this time, we're going to propose buying some of those flashcards and others, and see if we actually are going to have any machines, so that we will be ready to rent those out at the next election.
That sounds right, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any questions y'all may have? It takes a lot of process to get the machines ready, so when we do those, each machine has to go through a process of many different steps. I have a lot of this information in here for you to look at for the
Would you
future.
say that they just need, basically what it is in simpler language, is they have to be programmed, and you have to wait a time before you can clear all of that? Is that right?
That's really what has to happen, but as far as each machine has to go through a special testing.
Testing?
Yes, ma'am, and that is going to be in your packet. Go to those pages. Okay, first of all, when you get your iVotes back, and not so your PEDs or personal electronic ballots, you have to test those. You drop in clear and test iVote. You have to punch, go into different codes, and you punch clear and test, you vote the clear, you punch the vote button, punch clear. You have several different processes. You remove PED, you have to clear that terminal, the machine will let you know when it's successful. It runs its timing, and then therefore you can move to the next. You, if you will look here, it says testing your PEDs after receipt of the media. This here is steps that has to be taken on every PED that's mailed off and mailed back to us.
But the main timing thing is between the clearing and being able to get it programmed for the next election. Isn't that the main holdup?
No, ma'am, the main holdup is trying to do the testing to these, because the programming, you will get those 10 days before the elections.
Okay, so it's just a matter of your
Of us in office trying to get this testing done. Yes.
About how long does it take for each machine?
It depends on how long your ballots are. Your ballots, if it's early voting and you have a full ballot, we have timed the zeros testing. It's an hour and some odd per running the zeros tapes. Then you have
When you
that.
start that on one machine and it starts processing, can you go to the next machine and start it processing?
I don't advise that, because you have exactly a list you have to follow and do a checklist, and you have to have the checklist. It'll tell you to stop, don't do anything yet. Then if it's at the same location, you cannot move on to that machine until that one has completed. Then you move to the next machine at the same location. So it's a whole line process that takes a lot of time as you're going forward to test them. This is what takes the longest. You have to write the IVO numbers down, you have to calibrate, which you go into the different systems, you have to follow X's along the whole entire.
If you rent machines,
Yes, ma'am.
you can rent them and just rent the machine and then have to do all of that process
That's
for
correct.
themselves, isn't that
That's
correct?
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. But as far as us doing our testing for what we need, a solution would be possibly that if at the same time when our timing's not worked right, we could have less machines at each of the locations. We could,
But if you have those flashcards and PEBs already,
you still must provide every testing on the IVO for every election.
but if we rented them to the schools, they would do that, or the cities.
That's correct, but if we get them back to have to use them, then we would have to have the timing to do the testing. But if, like this timing, when we would not have had the time to get them turned around,
But we don't use all of our machines at the runoff, do we?
no ma'am, we have 4 extras and 2 broke.
You know, I looked into a lot of this. I spent the whole week looking into this. I think one of the problems that we would run into is if we had let the city use the machine that we already use, which we could have, but the problem would be is that the city has to canvass their votes, which is going to take about 2 weeks, which means that we'll be already in the runoff election, and the machines would be tied up, which means that we would be using less machines because the city, we have to wait for
But
the
at the
city.
runoff, we usually do use less machines.
Yes ma'am, we have 6 that we did not use.
And so we would
So
need,
there's such,
go ahead.
I think if we managed them, we could use a few less, a few spots,
Yes ma'am.
and that we could get that to work. But we'll look at that some more, but it might
Yes.
be we need to buy a few more machines. But, I know that Limestone County, I mean, they're able to do it, and they have 64 machines, but and they have 21 polling places, so they have a lot more polling places than we do.
Yes ma'am, and they use less at each location.
And I think if we would be willing to use less at some of our polling places, that would cure some of the problems that we could maybe set aside 10, which if each commissioner would give up maybe 2
But
machines.
when you think about our runoff now, the only, I mean, it'll change for each election. Like this
Yeah.
time, it's not a local election that we're looking at.
Mhm.
Now, at another election, like at last time, if there was a if there had been a runoff for one of the commissioners this time, then we would be more heavily, need more at the polling places in those precincts. But, you know, when you look at it, there are some things that we can look at.
Yes, ma'am, there
We'll look
sure
at
is.
those and then make a recommendation.
That's great.
For
and
the
I'm-
budget.
Yes, and I'm willing to work in any way with them.
Yeah, but I like the idea of them, being responsible for getting, you know, us just renting machines, and then they can do the testing and the setup and all, so that,
Yes, ma'am.
you know, I mean,
That
that's.
helps tremendously, yes
Yes,
ma'am.
yeah, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Well, Terry this year, at the election, they had one machine broke down, they just had one, they got kind of in line, or people got upset because they had to wait in line to vote all the time.
Yes,
Then they
sir.
got another machine over and they kind of got, but there's different time periods of day that you have more people voting.
Mhm.
But, that's not, probably not got from, they don't have one machine down, but I don't know how you gonna take one from Tig if two is probably up anyway.
Well, we did, for example, close a couple of, or not open for early voting a couple of places, so those machines were not used, so they didn't have to be, you know, they were available, those. But it just depends on the election. And, you know, the cost right now of a refurbished machine is $1,940. So if we have to get, you know, 2 or 3 more machines or whatever, but we can do a projection, I think, between now and then is what we think we'll need and
Yes,
use
that's a great idea.
and bring that forward.
What are they using this weekend at the mayor's race in Tig? Are they using our machines?
No.
We did not lease them because we didn't really have, I did not feel we had the extras and the time to turn around. We have 4 extras and 2 broke. So if anybody wanted to lease those 4, that would leave us with no extras. such as the incident that happened in Teague, and we went and troubleshot the one Avatronic in Teague, we therefore had to take one and replace it. So if we were to lease those 4, then we wouldn't have any if something happened with our election. So that's why purchasing more or putting less at another location. I don't see that Teague needs less than 2 like you're saying, yes, sir, they need the 2 in early voting. But it might be at another
If we
location.
get some more of those flash cards, which are not expensive, then we could use some of those machines. You don't have to wait for that turnaround on the testing. Not the testing, the programming.
Correct, the programming will give you 10 days prior to your election. You're exact, that's exactly right. Yes,
Okay.
you're
Thank
right.
you.
If we're gonna, when we look at this in the future, and we're going to let those entities use those machines, I think we should be able to program them for them. Because that's what Limestone County does. Limestone County has programmed the one for Wortham, the one for Streetland, from what I've been told, they program
We'll
it.
check into
And
that.
bring them, and set them up, bring it there, and there it is.
I'll know that.
May I share that on that? She's an election administrator,
Okay.
that's all she does year round.
I looked into
my
that,
staff.
she's an election coordinator, and hours is a part-time person, so that would be something that we would have to look at, is that if they do that, then we would have to have somebody that would have more hours to be able to run to those different places to program those things.
What does that person do whenever, what does that person do? Do they do that for our elections, our county elections? They program for our county elections?
Actually, it's the company that does the programming.
The company does the programming?
Yes, they just send their information in, and the company does the programming, and then when you get that back from them, then you look at it to be sure it's
Well,
right.
the company probably did do the programming for the ones in Teague,
Yes,
because the ones in Teague, they had to lease them from the company, because Limestone County had already leased all theirs out to different places.
Yes, sir.
all right. Let's go to the next, which is